It's hard to be prepared for something you may not have experienced before. It is important to talk to people who have walked that path before you to understand, what does it look like when it goes right? What does it look like when it doesn't go right? And to know that either way could happen to you, right? You might experience, the positive, you might experience the negative, you might experience both. And you can't know how you're going to feel until you're experiencing it yourself. But knowing that it can happen, it at least helped me. I wasn't totally caught off guard. I knew that this was a risk. It's explained to me by the agency, by the clinic, by my own doctors at home. And so going into it, you just need to know that there are risks involved. And sometimes things go bad. And a lot of times, surrogates, we can recover from that and keep moving forward. And then sometimes, the parents need a break as well because, while we're going through it physically, they're heavily invested emotionally. I think what's really important for people to know about surrogates is that even though we know we're about to give birth, we're not exempt from the baby blues, right? Our hormones are going to change because pregnancy is pregnancy and giving birth is giving birth, right? Where that baby goes after does not change the fact that our bodies have to heal and recover. And so when you are speaking to a surrogate who's recently postpartum and she is sad and she's upset, a lot of people will say, "Oh, do you miss the baby?" And what's interesting about that is, of course we miss the baby, right? We spent a long time making sure that we delivered a happy and healthy baby to the intended parents. But who we really miss more are the parents themselves. There is nothing that will fast track a relationship between a surrogate and the parents quicker than actual birth. I would say in my first journey, I think we spent so much time early on in the pregnancy tiptoeing around each other, being on eggshells because they didn't want to upset or offend the person carrying their child. And I didn't want the parents of the child that I was carrying to think that I was incompetent or not worthy of carrying their child, right? So there's just a lot of time early in the journey where you're just so cautious with each other. But once we really got to experience such an amazing moment together, it just solidified that bond. And we realized, wow, we should have spent more time together. We should have been talking more, just person to person, not surrogate to parent, but person to person. And luckily that continued well after the birth. But I think that would be the one thing that I would change is just to get to know them more earlier on. Yeah, we're all people, and it's just it's such a unique experience. So when people see the surrogate after, oh, you missed the baby. Yes, the baby is wonderful. I miss the parents. The parents are the ones that I'm here for. I think surrogacy specific mental health supports is one of the things that I don't want to say was lacking. I think it's just still such a new area. And so my feedback after my journey was, I had a lot of support up until birth, but I wish there would have been something after for people to prepare me emotionally what this feels like. It's very different than when you have your own children, right? And so I was able to actually move into that space. And now I run those support groups for surrogates who are recently postpartum or in their third trimester, and we're preparing for that postpartum period. And so I get to spend a lot of time with surrogates reflecting on what their journey was, what might they change, what happened that they didn't expect, and pass that wisdom on to other surrogates. But I think parents probably need something very similar, right? As surrogates, we have been parents, we have been through pregnancy and birth before. So we know a lot about what to expect for that. But if we're working with parents who are first-time parents, the change into becoming a parent overnight, that's really difficult, especially if it's a baby that you've wanted for so long, right? It's all this anticipation and excitement. But then you couple it with stress and lack of sleep. Everybody just needs support. And there's a reason they say it takes a village to raise a child. And especially in those early days, making sure that parents have enough support, and making sure that surrogates understand much of what they're feeling after delivery is very normal, and that they're not alone in those feelings. Be open with your surrogate and open up the connection with her early on in the journey, beyond the pregnancy. Get to know each other as people and establish expectations for communication early on, so that everybody can meet those. One of the things I hear most often from surrogates and parents is that they didn't talk enough, or they wish they would have talked more. So set an expectation up front, like I would like to communicate, several times a week, by text. I would love to do a phone call during an appointment. I would love to do a phone call, once a month. And what does that look like? Set parameters around social media, set parameters around communication, because I think what happens is, like I said, people are walking on eggshells because you're, trying to balance how delicate this relationship is, but you're missing out on a friendship. So being open and honest really from the beginning, that you want that communication and you look forward to that communication, and it doesn't have to be only about a pregnancy, I think is a great way to get to know your surrogate, and for surrogates to get to know the likes and interests of the family for the baby that they're carrying, so that they can find ways to incorporate that into the pregnancy. If you know that you are done building your own family and your uterus still has a lot of life left in it, and you enjoy pregnancy or tolerate pregnancy really well, it's absolutely worth exploring in order to bring life to another family, and in order to help grow and support your own family in very different ways. I think the thing that surrogates share in common with each other is they put their heart and soul into this, and it is just as meaningful for them as it is for the parents. And we're just so appreciative when parents give us the opportunity to be a chapter in their story. For anticipating the process, have a clear understanding of what all the steps are and who your key players are in your journey. But outside of the clinic and your surrogate and the agency, make sure you have your own support system, whether that's friends, family, a partner, and ideally, if you can connect with somebody who has become a parent through surrogacy, they will be a really invaluable support through the process. Yes. Surrogacy is still on my heart. I still feel like I have more to give to the surrogacy community, so I am pursuing another journey. Beautiful. It's beautiful. I like to think of myself as a mentor to other surrogates that are interested in pursuing that process, helping to manage those expectations, knowing when to speak up and advocate for yourself, knowing what questions to ask. I think where I naively went into surrogacy, I hadn't done a ton of research. I kind of let myself be guided through that process, and it turned out beautifully for me. And I realized that I'm very lucky to have had such amazing parents to work with, and we were always on the same page. But I didn't know what questions to ask to kind of understand the different steps and what was expected. And now I know. And so I make sure that other surrogates know what questions to ask during medical clearance, what questions to ask during the legal process. There's just so many intricate parts of surrogacy, and it's so important that every single party understands what is available to them, and that they're protected through this whole process. So no one ever asks, what does the long-term relationship look like between a surrogate and the parents or the child? Obviously, the baby that I had a few years ago is not really old enough to comprehend how she came to be, but we had an open discussion what that looks like. They wanted her to know, my role in the process and who I was, and have me be available to talk to her about my experience with the pregnancy. And so I would say my role would be kind of like a fun aunt, right? I'm never going to forget her birthday. And it's just a special experience that only she and I will share. And so I want to be around for the major milestones. I want to send loud, noisy, messy gifts that her dads have to clean up after. I want to be the fun aunt, right? And so, yeah, I just want to maintain that relationship in a way that lets her know where she came from, how very wanted and loved she was from just for so long before she was born, and that I'm always open to talk about what her story looked like before she remembered it.